my potatoes.
Okay, I think we're all here. Okay, and it's a minute after 7. So I would like to call to order the July 20th, 2020 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If you could please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic
which stands one nation under God, indivisible,
liberty,
and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening who's with us or who's viewing from home. The board held an executive session June 22nd regarding negotiations and personnel, and an executive session prior to this meeting regarding school safety. Board members, with an agenda before you, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. Okay, so seeing none then, Dr. O'Donnell will now be reviewing some of the housekeeping items related to the COVID-19 pandemic and our virtual format.
Thank you. As a result of COVID-19, this will be a virtual meeting via Zoom webinar. Nick Zepp will serve as host of tonight's virtual meeting. The IT help desk is available during the meeting if the community encounters technical difficulties at 814-231-7743. A few notes for meeting participants. When the board or community members want to make a remark or ask a question, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom program accessed under the participants tab. We will have a public comment section here upcoming on the agenda. For public participants, there are 2 parts in the meeting for participation: public comment, and if action item is discussed further by the board. The host will lower hands and mute or unmute speakers as necessary to assist with the flow of the meeting. Pursuant to Board Policy 3, at least 5 board members shall be present in the boardroom, 4 of whom must be physically present, with a 5th or an additional member or members able to participate remotely. As a result of the global pandemic, all board members are participating remotely. Policy 9 provides that where discretion is directly or by implication granted to the board may depart from policy. Given the extraordinary times and circumstances that we find ourselves in, the board is choosing to exercise its discretion and depart from Policy 3's requirements of at least 4 board members being physically present. Board will continue to monitor the situation, make decisions on a case-by-case basis to continue or not with meetings in this manner. The board will return to strict adherence to Policy 3 as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O'Donnell. At this time, we will have a roll call of board members who are present, and I would like to call on our board secretary for that roll call.
Dr. Bader.
Here.
Ms. Bedell.
Here.
Ms. Brandt. No. Okay. Ms. Concepcion.
Here.
Dr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. Fazzard.
Here.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Here.
Mr. Leos.
Here.
Ms. Zidney.
Here.
Amber, you're muted.
Thank you. At this time, we have time for communications on the board agenda, and I'd like to call on Dr. O'Donnell for the superintendent's update.
Thanks, Amber. I'd just like to share a little bit of update of what we just communicated with families and our employees. We've been working very hard on preparing for the fall, and I think as you look at what we've developed with our partnership with key professionals in our community to help us with our safety plan, as well as with our faculty and our principals to develop options for families. I just need to be frank that with some of the changing information that we receive, we're making changes that we think make sense for kids, and we want to do the best we can for students. And I know right now not everybody is feeling great about things. I'm not either. But we're trying to do the best we can with what we have and with some really wonderful people working really hard to develop this. There's no question some of the changes that we make with our planning. I wish we were a month ago with some of our conversations and some of the information. So with what we know now, some of the changes that we have made, some of the questions we've received from parents, which is really helpful when faculty members, when principals, family members, board members are sharing their thinking. It's helpful. It's difficult, no question, with all the iterations and how fast things are going, the volume of communications. The best conversations that we have that are focused on the problems we're working on are the ones where people are listening and sharing their thinking and not fighting over disagreements. And there are disagreements and we're having them. But I can say I'm very proud of all the people who are helping us. I'm proud of our community for helping us. And I want people to, as adults, model that for the kids. We're working through some of the biggest problems we'll ever face in our roles, and we're going to do the best we can. And if we're able to have a safe plan to be in schools, we want to give that as an option. If we can't, then we won't. And right now we feel like that's an option we can deliver on and keep students and our faculty and staff safe. So we're moving forward. We're working on an option for the secondary schools. It doesn't include synchronous remote learning as an option, but it'll be a little bit different than elementary. They are going to be a little bit different. The models that we have are naturally different before all this happened. And, we believe that, if we can make that change, it makes a lot of sense. So we're working on that. We have a lot of meetings tomorrow, a lot of conversations happening throughout this past, week and weekend regarding the issue of remote. We know that by making the adjustment in elementary, it raised a lot of questions about secondary. And, we're working on it, and we're hopeful to have, an option on Wednesday, but we want to make sure that we have the conversations and cover the bases. So we will have a culture, climate, and learning meeting with the board on board committee on Wednesday, and we've asked to make an adjustment to that agenda. And then we want to have an update for the community. We're also hoping to have a town hall format for our families who still have questions on Thursday. So, we'll have more information coming out so that if you still have remaining questions and, you need to ask someone from the district beyond your principal, we'll have that option as well. So that's outlined in the, it's a pretty short email, but, that's mapped out for parents. There's another key piece in the email, and I asked Gene Knaus to join me this evening to just share part of our conversation this morning, because we did check in with professionals on the safety team to run some key questions by them, and including something that relates to contact tracing. But it really focused in on the 6-foot distance piece, and I'll let Gene share the update there, and then Amber, if it's okay, I'll turn it over to board member questions. We don't usually do that on the front end, but I think with the time that we're in and with the information that we shared, I think we should give you an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions with where we are, and then obviously we will have another check-in on Wednesday.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
right.
Jean.
Sure. So we met this morning, and we received a lot of emails this weekend, and like Bob said, we appreciate them. They kind of shed light on some things that we really had not seen or heard yet. And so they really allowed us the opportunity to have further conversations and to really dig into some of the information a little bit further. Luckily, we did have a safety team meeting planned today, so we were able to revise our agenda and talk about some of those critical things that were brought up. One was the contact tracing. And first I'll say, we really don't have a contact tracing system in place yet, primarily because we're looking for the Department of Health for that guidance. they're in the midst of developing that process and hiring positions. So we are waiting on that. So that's one piece of the plan that I know we've been getting lots of questions, but yet we're not ready to move forward in that system yet or process because we need further guidance from them on the expectations and what that's going to look like. Are we going to be the lead with that, or are they going to be the lead with that? In talking with our team this morning, some things that were really brought to light were a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of kind of the 15-minute process of instruction that we were taking as being like the duration for a viral load. I don't say not the medical professionals in that team, but probably mostly the administrators who don't have medical backgrounds, which would be me and some others, would be thinking that the viral load, not so much reset, but yet would be washed away instead of taking in. It was more of a moving away piece, and we could add 15 minutes throughout the day. So in having further conversations about that, we've been corrected in thinking that the viral load is a accumulation of 15 minutes. So it's really getting what someone's putting out, and that the 15-minute is really a baseline that they look at to say, that's about the time when the viral load can infect you. And so in thinking about that, that somewhat disrupts our thinking process of how we were going to do some of our educational models, right? With having kids coming and going so we can work in small groups for less than 15 minutes. And so now we're looking at, depending on the class and how many, if it's a cohort class like elementary, we do that 15-minute instructional piece once a day, in that they're going to be together all day. And what's that going to be? Or do we not do that and we maintain the social distance and the mask wearing? Very tricky at the middle school and high school because of the number of kids that you see during the day, and then the number of cohorts that can be counted, right? Every class would be a cohort, and the more people you involve in that, it broadens the contact tracing. So by wearing the mask and socially distance, we really can't even look to saying, were you wearing a mask for contact tracing purposes? So that's another tricky piece that we kind of light was shed on, and that came out in the information we received this weekend, and PD put another update on July 16th. So this is continually updating and revising itself. So we can look to elementary and have more of a linear approach to how we can do the contact tracing, because we know we have more of a cohort that we can look at. Where at middle and high school, they're kind of advising us saying, mask and social distancing really don't come into effect there. You would do more of who are you closest with, who are your best friends, and who are people you're around the most. So that really opens up the contact tracing pretty far at the middle and high school level. And so again, we don't have any answers related to contact tracing and how that approach is going to look yet, because we're looking for guidance from Department of Health, and we hope to get that. We do have some connections which we're leaning into, trying to push that envelope a little bit. So that was primarily our conversation today. And so if you have any questions related to that or anything else that you want clarity around, that we did get an update on July 16th, and that did change our plan from what they had previously given to us. So at some point we may need to come back for updates and revisions, but probably closer to the beginning of school in case we get more updates from this point on also. So trying to save you some time and our team.
So Jean, some of the critical points there then were that even if someone is wearing a mask and they're in close contact in that 15-minute range, whether or not they're wearing the mask is not a factor.
Right. And so I wouldn't say not a factor. It reduces the risk, right? But even in a 95 mask is only 95% effective. So it does reduce the risk, but it's not something they're taking into consideration that they have any research on to say that it is a determining factor to make it contact tracing. Yeah.
Right. To be able to determine if somebody may have been exposed. We are still, of course, this mask is very important.
Right.
And so then the 15 minutes clearly is not, that is cumulative over the course of a day, at least, certainly doesn't reset.
Correct.
Those are two of the key questions.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I do, before any other questions, want to make sure that the information that came out from the state late last week really did help us in regard to implementing our plan with fidelity to requiring masks. So, as you see what came out from the state, it did give us the opportunity to have support for what we have identified in our plans with masks. And if there are any unique cases we are working on finalizing our request process, and then how we would work through that to make sure that we're evidencing a true problem and a need, but then also what would be the other measures we would put in place for safety in those cases if they were approved. I think that was a big question around masks, and I just want everybody to know that we've obviously in the plan taken a very strong expectation that everybody's going to wear masks, and the 6 feet piece, Gene obviously re-clarified a key part to that. And what came out from the state was very supportive of our plan.
Good news. Board members, any questions for Gene on this portion of the plan? Dan?
Yeah, quick question, Gene, and it is really an epidemiological one, I suppose. I mean, one of the themes that's coming forward in the public media over the last month has to do with the role of children and adolescents in the pandemic as sources of contagion, and also as potential victims. Of course, one of the themes that we're reading is that elementary kids are not as susceptible to the full-blown experience of COVID as either adolescents or young adults or older. But they nonetheless, and my understanding is they nonetheless can spread the disease to others in their family or others with whom they have any contact. Are there any, I mean, we're kind of it seems to me that the school district and the numbers of students that we have of all ages represent a pretty significant vector for problems if some or several of our kids wind up with COVID. What's the thinking among the medical professionals on the safety team in relation to this question about our responsibility to oversee this and to be rigorous about setting up procedures to minimize the ways in which our students might get sick, or certainly it may not be symptomatic, but could pass the disease on to others?
Right. And so the whole safety plan is about that, right? It is
Right.
really reducing the risk. And I will say there was a study that just came out from Korea that said primarily students ages 10 and up carry the same amount of viral load as an adult. So when you're looking at 9 and younger, they don't have the outward speaking, the force behind their words. So that's one thing to know. Okay, they're still carrying the viral load and they still can be contagious. They may be asymptomatic or not have the symptoms but they can still give the virus to somebody else very easily. And so what they were really kind of talking about more was protecting those that are at high risk. And I'm actually working with Linda on some numbers on that to run through our epidemiologists to say, what does that look like? Who are at most risk? They even had some conversation about being able to do some testing. And so we're looking into that option also, and what that might look like. So the more things we put in place, the better we are. The more we cohort, the better we are, right? So the more we keep kids in the same groups, the less that will spread. So nothing is preventative. In fact, I think, Bob, if you were there when he said this, 95%, what do you say, still need to be infected or something to that effect, or can susceptible.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty big number to say that there's 95% that are still susceptible to getting it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gretchen?
Yeah, thanks. I had a question about, and I've had several families ask me this, so I thought I'd go ahead and ask it. So in regards to a student who has I don't know what the ultimate qualification would be, but a doctor's official notice that they should not be wearing a mask. If that student is in a classroom, will the other families in that classroom be notified that there is a student in their child's class that will not be wearing a mask? Because, of course, some families may then choose to go remote or virtual academy if they had that information? Thank you.
So we need to work through each of those cases to find out. In our primary, if they couldn't wear a mask, we would talk about a shield with a quasi mask underneath or something to that effect. It could be to where if we can't put any accommodations and guarantee a 6-foot distance, that we may have to go remote or virtual. So I'm not sure as though we're allowing anyone in who doesn't have a doctor's excuse and a viable solution to that process, that we wouldn't think of the remote virtual option. Bob, am I correct in saying that?
Can you come again, Jean?
We would want everyone to wear a mask. If they couldn't, we would recommend it, or some kind of shield with a mask to it if they couldn't have the thing across their face, and then we would work through that process with the families.
Correct.
So we might need to offer another educational solution for them, if other than the main classroom, if that was the case. Good information. Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to clarify. So they would be encouraged to wear some type of face covering that would be acceptable to the safety team, I guess. And if that could not be negotiated, for lack of a better word, then they would be steered towards virtual or remote. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, there's no question. I think when we come across some things that we've never encountered before, I think using our health and safety team professionals to run the scenario that we're faced with, because we're looking at the safety of everybody in that classroom, to see what they think, because we're probably going to see some curveballs coming at us we've never seen before. So I think we want to lean on that group to see, is there a viable solution to maintain the level of safety that our plan has that's different? So if it's a piece of cloth on touching someone's nose and mouth, that's really the problem. There are some other solutions we've been informed of, and they seem pretty reasonable. Not everybody agrees on the word reasonable and its definition, but I think when it comes to the line of safety of everybody in that classroom, we've drawn the line with our safety plan, and our intent is to have that. So if somebody can't use some of the alternates that we identify, then absolutely, we don't think it's fair that we start allowing people to be in rooms without masks. And if there is a situation where that happens, I think we have to tell all the parents, and we have our employees to care for too. So we're going to stick to the hard line on that protection there. And we do have 2 other really good options, virtual and the remote option that we're working through. And the secondary one will be more of an synchronous option that we're working on because of the parameters there.
Okay, that's helpful. That totally answers it. Thank you.
Okay, board members, any other questions? Either for Jean or for Dr. O'Donnell on the planning for the ed model?
I do think as we get changes to the plan and some of the things that refined, Jean's been recording them in red, and we'll talk to board leadership and Scott Etter regarding what needs approved by the board. Some of them are clarifying points, but we'll speak to what we're learning and what we think needs clarified with the plan. Some things will be refined in the plan, and I think we need to just make sure we're sharing that with you. We don't want to do that right now because as we go through the next several weeks, there's a lot of discussions and a lot of questions coming in. So, we want to be careful how many times we ask you to refine it.
It might be helpful to just keep a running document though, with some of these refinements between now and the next time that if it's going to come to the board, whether it's like in the form of an FAQ or some bullet point for what we're working on as we go, in terms of, like, for example, the 15-minute window and how we've come to a better understanding of that.
We didn't have the 15-minute in the window in the plan at all.
Right.
But what I've been doing is highlighting in red any changes any revisions that the state has made. And so it's easy to look at the plan and see what has changed by the state.
Okay. Thanks, Jean.
Thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so still continuing on with the communications portion of the agenda, the next item is our legislative update. And I'd like to see if David Hutchinson or Lori Bedell has an update for us on legislative.
David, do you want me to start? Yeah, okay. So we had a meeting on July 9th, and a good chunk of that meeting was dedicated to the discussion of rural broadband. Matt Leonard of the Pennsylvania Rural Electric Association joined the call, and he talked about House and Senate bills that each have been passed separately that would allow the electric co-ops to add lines and provide broadband to rural communities. However, they're being held up respectively in each chamber, largely because incumbent providers are kind of working to block this from happening because they don't want the competition from rural broad from the co-op. And so if you care about equity in broadband, it would be a good idea to give your House and Senate leaders a call and ask them to get this moving through. Certainly, it's affecting our local communities in the center region, among other places. The second thing was that PSBA is looking for Success Starts Here stories. And so if we have anything to submit to PSBA, it's just successstartshere.org. There will be another virtual advocacy day on October 8th. So put it on your calendars. We'll be doing that virtually. And then I think the last thing I'll mention is that PSBA is going to be providing public comment on CARES Act money that's going to private schools. And there's a thought that this will probably end up in the courts. So again, that might be another thing that you want to contact legislators about and share your concerns if that's a concern for you. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Lori. David, did you have anything to add on this?
No, that was great. Thanks, Lori. That was great.
Yeah. Okay, so Gretchen, is there any report from the Council of Governments?
Yeah, two things. The solar purchasing power agreement next planned meeting has been canceled, and that's just because we're sort of at a standstill until there's time to look at the RFPs. The second thing is that you all remember there was a Parks and Rec steering committee to create a comprehensive plan for recreation parks and open space and in the center region. And that has now turned into an action plan. And that action plan will be discussed at an upcoming meeting amongst the Parks Capital Committee as well as the original steering committee. And the conversation will review the action plan, know what items have already been started or are complete so far, and then to organize the remaining tasks into priority levels and into responsibility categories, whether it'll be staff, the authority, COG, or individual townships. So that meeting is coming up on July 27th. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we have time for public comment. If any of the attendees here would like to make a public comment, if you could, before you start, let us know. You could state your name and where you are from in the district, and each individual will be limited to comments of up to 3 minutes as time permits for items on the agenda or related to board business. And I apologize ahead of time that I'm going to be relatively strict on the 3 minutes because we do have over 80 attendees in this meeting. So just in case, I don't want to cut short anyone else's time later in the meeting. So I will start with Stephen Williamson. I see your hand up. And Mr. Williamson, if you'd like to go ahead, state your name and perhaps where you reside in the district.
Looks like he's still muted on the panelist list.
Let's see.
Can you hear me now? Are we
Yeah.
good to go now?
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, 1 second here. Yes, my name is Stephen Williamson. I am a father of 2 children, a first and a sixth grader at Mount Nittany Elementary and to be at Mount Nittany Middle School. I am a certified mathematics and social studies teacher. I am a PTO officer at Mount Nittany Elementary, and I volunteered the last 3 years as a chess teacher for their chess club. Recently, you added an additional option for K-5. I understand you are now considering adding remote to secondary. If that is the case, then I believe the choices for middle school need to be the same as the elementary school, not as the high school. I believe most parents that chose the in-school option would prefer students attending every day, knowing that 6-foot social distancing will likely not be possible in their classroom cohort. I'm asking you to poll the parents in these grades to find the truth. Every decision maker and educator in this district believes that the best education for the majority of children is every day in person. Every parent has been given a viable option except the parent of a secondary student who wants their child in school every day to get the best possible education. We, the parents in this district, have been responsible. Many of us were away on spring break when schools were shut down in March. We took care of our families then and have continued to take care of our families since. Just look at the data and the numbers in our community and in our county. I am respectfully asking you tonight to give grades 6 to 8 the option that balances the best education with health and safety. I think you may find you have enough numbers for an entire team in each grade, if not all of them. I understand how a school schedule works in the middle school. It is not an impossible task to cohort the students. I know the 6th grade schedule is easier to work than 7th and 8th, but they all can be done with effort. Not one grade should have to sacrifice for another. Fair does not mean equal. Children are safe going back to school. There is significant evidence from all over the world, including here in the United States, that school-aged children and teachers in good health have almost no risk of health complications, especially when compared to the flu. Even that Korean study suggests that asymptomatic children are not passing it on. It was inconclusive, but it suggested that. More importantly, the school-aged children in our community are doing well. An estimated 8 cases in the entire county, ages 5 to 18, over the past 4 months. Everyone understands exceptions and allowances. I am not asking for one size fits all. I am asking for the best educational option. Lastly, our children are ready to learn. It is discouraging that our district refuses to give middle school students the best education possible. If we want the students to consistently beat yesterday, they need to be in school every day. The parents of this district have been responsible, respectful, and safe, and have earned this for our children. We all know the best way is to educate them in school every day. Let's make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. Ms. Myers, I see your hand up.
Oh, that's who that was.
Who was it?
Nabil Mark. You know who that is?
No.
Nabil Mark, Nabil.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. I respectfully request an extra 30 seconds because I'm speaking for about 200 people.
Okay, I haven't started a timer yet. If you could just state your name, where you reside in the district.
Yep, my name is Carla Myers and I reside in Bollesburg, and my husband and my daughter goes to Delta. She will be a rising 9th grader.
Thank you.
Okay. So first, thanks to the board for all your hard work. I know this is very challenging. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about Delta in particular. So according to the State College School District, the Delta program is a democratic school of choice. It's founded on the principle that Delta community of teachers, students, and parents make the decisions about issues that concern the school. Delta is not an exercise in democracy, it's a democracy. Tonight I speak not for all of Delta, I speak only for my family and the 200+ parents, students, alumni, and allies who signed our petition to request solely at-home remote learning taught by Delta teachers and consisting of Delta classes. Of course, people are always welcome to move to the virtual academy, as that has been around for 10 years and has always been an option. So we have 2 main reasons we're making this request. First and foremost, we don't choose to endanger our teachers, staff, and their families by sending teachers back to the classroom this fall. We want our teachers to teach the classes they've prepared and that our children excitedly await. Now, I know you guys are doing a lot of hard work, and I respect that. But again, we are a democratic school and we feel differently. We want our teachers to have the freedom to engage with our children, not spend time policing student social distance, mask compliance, and wiping down classrooms. Although our teachers are willing to risk their health in the classroom, we cannot in good conscience ask them to do so during a global pandemic. We have a moral obligation to protect the people who care for our children. Now, the second point is one that I wanted to bring up because I've had some feedback that it's unfair that Delta would get what may be seen as a third option. But the truth is, all district families were given a relevant second choice, except those who attend Delta. So let me explain. The standard in-class SCASD curriculum and the virtual academy classes are reasonably similar. The virtual academy, therefore, may be a reasonable substitution in that situation. Delta classes are completely unlike the virtual academy, apples and oranges. So choosing the virtual academy would be similar to choosing the standard curriculum in the first place. And incidentally, the virtual academy has existed for 10 years and parents are always free to select it. So this is our problem. We at Delta can choose from Delta classes in school, thereby endangering teachers, or doing the virtual academy and forfeiting the Delta education we selected. On the screen we've all had to look at, we have two boxes to check, but in truth, we have no meaningful choice. Our daughter Grace is registered at Delta. This will be her 5th year. We were promised and expect a Delta education, and the only way to do this safely is Delta classes with Delta teachers online. So importantly, in this very challenging time, this continuity would benefit the mental health of our students by allowing students and staff to remain in the regular classes with the familiarity of teachers and classmates from their in-person schools. So
Ms.
we intend,
Myers,
yes, one.
yeah. I'm sorry, the only reason I want to interrupt you, partly the 3.5 minutes is up, but we are looking at providing a remote option to all students. And my understanding would be that Delta students would be part of that. There's an email that came out from Dr. O'Donnell and some of the updates that we had earlier in this meeting. So we are putting that third option out there. So there's been a 1-week extension on the opportunity to make a decision for your student. Maybe Dr. O'Donnell, you'd like to chime in here to clarify, but there's not only the 2 options at this point. So there is the option to provide Delta courses as a remote experience. As you're
finished though.
You can have one, just briefly, please. Yes.
Okay. What I'm requesting though is the self-determination that we've always expected and had at Delta. So it's not a matter totally of getting additional choices. We want to make the decision because we think we know what's best for our community. So we'd have to figure out how that would happen, but we would like to be able to make that decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Amber, I'll just make a remark. If all Delta students pick remote, because there are some that think differently, if all pick remote, then yes, then the whole school would be remote. But we have to work out that option before we finalize what we communicate out. And I do think just for the whole district, the safety plan, which is driving a lot of our constraints, regardless of your perspective on things, the safety plans being written, the key protocol are developed by people who aren't, our faculty and principals and myself. We've really assembled a team of medical and science professionals to help us to ensure that if anybody is in our schools, that we're adhering to a very strict, safe plan, because we want everybody, including all of our employees, to be safe if we're in school. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Donnell. Okay, trying to pull up the screen again with, I see Michelle Rodino has a hand raised. Michelle, if you'd like to go ahead.
Okay, hi, thank you. Thank you, Amber and the board. Thanks for all of your work, and thanks for teachers. I want to mention teachers first because I feel like I haven't heard from teachers. We have a daughter who's at Park Forest, and we've had just her whole life she's been in SCASD, and we've just had the best experiences with teachers who care, with teachers who work beyond the hours they're paid, especially during the pandemic, and especially when we went remote last year. I was astounded at what some of her teachers were willing to do to make sure that their students were comfortable, in their Zoom experience, and that they were able to actually become educated during a pandemic, which is something only a superhero could do. So first, my question is, can we please ensure teacher choice and teacher voice in our planning for fall 2020? I haven't heard from teachers, and I would like to hear where they are and what their concerns are. And I would like for teachers to have the choice as to whether they teach online or in school. Secondly, I also am one of those parents with a middle school student who very much likes the idea that you are now thinking of a remote option, and I would choose that if it were offered. So I thank you for listening to students and parents' needs and discussions and questions over the weekend and over the past week. I would also say that I do have some concerns when I hear the comparison of in-school being made to remote options and virtual. It's kind of an unfair comparison to compare in-school during the pandemic to in-school pre-pandemic. And while we'd all want an in-school pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, in-school classes would have to be stressful because of the need to strictly adhere to rules and regulations, and any deviation, any single deviation could be deadly. That is a huge stress for everyone to live under, for students, for staff, for teachers. We are not soldiers. We do not have combat training. We're not even first responders in a hospital. So I think it's very much a burden that I think a lot of us haven't really understood what learning in this environment and teaching in this environment would be at best. So my last question is to actually question in class at all. With transmission rates what they are in the United States, I don't think, and in Pennsylvania, I don't think we have earned, I'm just going to use that word right now, the ability, or we haven't proven that we have the ability to be in face-to-face spaces indoors yet, because doing so risks death and loss of our hospital and people in this community. We have a small hospital that's in financial crisis right now. And I'm concerned that opening SCASD to in-school and the double whammy with Penn State planning still to reopen could be crushing, and one life lost, whether that be a student, a staff member, or a faculty member, is too many. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Sorry, it takes me a minute to toggle between screens. Okay, I see Eugene Russia's hand raised.
If there's anyone else, I'll take a pause for now and wait until there's other folks who need to speak.
Go ahead. I see. Sorry, my timer's going off now. Yeah, there are, but if you'd like to go ahead, it's okay.
No, I would prefer to wait if I can.
Oh, I see. Okay. Michelle Stein, I see your hand raised. Michelle, if you could unmute your.
There you go. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I want to thank the board and the school district for the incredible amount of work that has gone into this. And I know that everyone has done the very best they can to do what is absolutely in the best interest of our children and our communities. So thank you so much for that. My concern is that I have a rising 6th grader who will be going into the Delta program. And he absolutely wants to go back in person, but that choice may not be up to him because his father and I are less comfortable with that. But he also, he has autism. And so I'm very concerned about knowing what supports and procedures are going to be in place in the remote option for secondary students with special needs before we have to actually make that choice. So will there be any way to know what the plan is to provide supports for students with special needs before we have to make a decision between remote or in person?
Thank you, Ms. Stein. I would recommend getting in touch with your principal and perhaps with the special ed department of the school district.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I see a hand raised that just says SCASD, but so I'm not sure who that would be. If you'd like to unmute. Okay. That might be some kind of fluke. Okay, Eugene, would you like to go ahead then?
Sure. Thanks, Amber. Eugene Russia, President of State College Area Education Association. And I feel the need to speak. I'm impelled to speak, and I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn. So first, I would like to say I'm speaking on behalf of the Education Association, which represents our teachers here in the district. I will not claim to speak for all of our teachers, but I will speak to some context. First, I would like to say that the number of communication meetings that are happening across the district are immense, as some of the speakers have said, and I appreciate being part of these conversations. No decision can be made without any downside. Our administrators, directors, faculty are trying everything that we can to keep kids, faculty, administrators safe while supplying a quality education for kids. The desires of all stakeholders, this includes teachers, are at every end of the spectrum and every place in between, whether you're talking remote, hybrid, in person, any combination, and every place in between. We have people who want all of those. And regardless of which one of these happens, there's stressors that are going to happen to some faction of whether it be teachers, administrators, kids, whatever. The people who are working on this stuff, and without me, perhaps I won't put myself in this bucket, are incredibly intelligent individuals trying to do everything they can to get all of this, and all of it is not possible. So as a result, sacrifices have to be made somewhere along the way. Where those sacrifices happen, we're not sure at this very moment. And I think that's the important thing to realize is there is no right answer to any of these problems. Every one of these situations, regardless, is going to have some downside. And everybody wants everything, and it's never going to happen. As much as our district is trying to do that, allowing 3 options for our families, for our kids is great. Obviously, we have teachers that want one option over the other, and scheduling that is an absolute nightmare. But I am confident that our district is going to do everything that it can to make sure that teachers who are going to be at risk will not be put in such a situation. I'm confident that teachers who want to put their best energies forward to educating kids will be able to. And I just feel the need to really clarify that point, that these options are quite a wide variety. And there's no way that anybody could do all of these, including teachers. It's not possible. We need to keep our teachers safe. We need to keep them healthy. We need to keep their mental capacities focused so that we can do the best job we can for kids. And stretching them over 4, 5, 7, 12 different options just isn't going to be good for kids. And I commend our administration for doing everything they can to keep all that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. Okay, is anyone else who is in attendance would like to make a public comment? I'll just wait just a moment. Okay, I don't see anyone else's hands raised then.
Amber, I believe that is a person.
Oh, okay, I'm not sure how to call on them then.
It might be one of the phone-in people. So I'm not, maybe that's part of the reason they don't know that they're, I don't know.
It's just identified as SCASD and it says talking permitted, but I'm not sure how to call on them. Nick, are you on? Do you know, are you able to see whose hand is raised there?
I'm not able to see anything additional.
Well, there's only one hand raised, so if you have your hand raised, you're it.
Yep, exactly. It looks like whoever has their hand raised is not muted at this time. So if your hand is raised and you're unmuted, please feel free to speak. Okay. All right. Now I see someone else. Miss Jen Norse, if you would like to make a comment, you're welcome.
Just need to unmute, Jen.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So hi, I'm Jen Norse. I have two third graders entering third grade at Park Forest. I have questions about concerns about the little kids, basically, and teachers. Like, it just seems completely impossible that kindergarten, first grade, special ed, that 6 foot distancing is going to be maintainable. And I'm just wondering if teachers are being provided with PPE in those settings. Just again, similar to what another speaker said earlier tonight, there just hasn't been much information or any voice from the teachers. And I'm really concerned on their behalf for their safety. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. And then I still just see the one caller that might be a phone call listener with a hand raised. If we're not able to connect, then please feel free to send us an email at all-board@scasd.org to make sure that we get your comments then. Okay. If there's no other public comments, then we'll move on to routine approvals. So at this time, I would like a motion to accept or approve the routine approvals as presented on the agenda.
Duffy, so moved.
I'll second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Board members, are there any questions in regard to routine approvals? Okay, Laurel?
Thank you, Amber. I wanted to ask about the Decision Insight renewal. It's in number F, one of the technology annual service contracts, and I had a question on the term of the renewal.
What's your question, please?
What the term is. It looked like we had a contract that finished at the end of June, and I wasn't clear whether this is completing that contract or starting a new contract.
Starting a new 5-year contract.
At this amount, that's considerably less than we had previously. Is that correct?
This is an annual approval for $7,300.
This is different than the one that we did 3 years ago in October? And I'm sorry, I had sent the question in.
I believe that the 7,300 includes enrollment projections. We have an option of an additional, I think it's about $1,500 for residential analysis. But that has not, we're not asking for that at this point in time.
And we will ask for it annually, or is this to do it annually for 5 years?
We will do an annual renewal each year.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions in regard to routine approvals? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Ms. Brandt did message me. She's having some computer issues and she got knocked off. Maybe can we cycle to her last in case she manages to get on for this vote?
Or Ms. Concepcion?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fozard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
and Ms. Brandt.
Did she make it on?
I don't see her.
She had to reboot her computer, so she unfortunately might be a minute. So,
Okay. All right. So in any case, that item has passed then. Moving on then to action items. Item A is a motion to approve modifications to the 2020-2021 academic calendar.
Leah so moved.
Adele second.
Duffy second.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? This was one we had for information discussion last time. Okay. All right, seeing no questions, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt, Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fozard, Mr. Fozard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
yes.
Ms. Bedell.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Item B is a motion to approve the 2020-2021 Title I interdistrict agreement with Mifflin County School District to provide title services at Our Lady of Victory.
Duffy so moved.
Adele second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fozard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Okay, so that item has passed. Item C is a motion to approve the parameters resolution for future debt financing. And this is shown as an attachment 6C.
Fazard, so moved.
Leah second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fozard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yeah.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes. So that motion has passed. Item D is a motion to approve the elementary project change orders as shown in attachment 6D.
Duffy so moved.
Sydney second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this item? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Fozard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Item E is a motion to approve the Memorial Field project change orders, and this is shown in attachment 6E.
Fazard, so moved.
Adele
Leah
second.
second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, we will have a roll call vote then.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fozard.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. And item F is a motion to approve the Memorial Field project furniture, fixtures, and equipment. This is shown in item 6F.
Duffy so moved.
Adele second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? Laurel has a question.
All right, thank you. I know that money was set aside for this in the budget, but I am wondering, given the situation that we're in financially, whether there are any chairs or marker boards that we already have in storage or that we're planning to put in storage in an upcoming item that could be used at least temporarily for this.
Okay, excuse me, sorry. I can't speak right at this point to the number of chairs we have going into storage. We made this recommendation to purchase based on the fact that the 212 chairs will be needed for the project, and even chairs going into storage would be quite temporary at this point. I don't have any other answer to that other than we're recommending the purchase.
We don't have any that are already in storage from our past projects, chairs.
We don't have 212 appropriate chairs in storage, no.
All right. Any other questions on this item? Okay. Are there any public comments on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Item G is a motion to accept the addendum to the Colonial Press Agreement. This is shown in on agenda item 6G.
Leah, so moved.
Bedell, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote then.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Okay, so that item has passed. Item H is a motion to approve the lease with Summit Park for temporary storage needs due to the pandemic. This is shown in agenda item 6H.
Duffy, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Questions? Laurel.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering about whether these could be stored instead, these items at Fairmont, which is, I believe, either vacant or close to vacant. There may be some, I think there may be some data people still there.
The building is still being used and by a limited number of folks, but the area of storage that we're not able to identify an appropriate amount of area or accessible area to move the storage items in and out of that building. That's why we look for a location off-site.
This was the first we'd heard about it. I would have liked the opportunity to know more. I'm looking at a building that says it's 88,000 square feet and wondering why we can't find space there.
Ed, you probably know better than I do. I apologize, but to speak of what's in the Fairmont building right now.
Sure. We have our Hearts program is in the building, as well as the Wright program. They use the gymnasium and many of the larger spaces. Although they're small programs, they still use those spaces. We have some limited number of second-story classrooms that were occupied by the Delta program. Those classrooms they're up a difficult stairway to transport large volumes, and you know, and we have very small doorways into those classrooms. There being an older building, difficult to access those spaces.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I hadn't realized the gym was being used by students. I appreciate that update.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any public comment on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Item I is a motion to approve the agreement with K-12 Inc. for Fuel Education Software as a tool used within the K-5 Virtual Academy. This is shown in agenda item 6I.
Adele, so moved.
Leah second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions on this item? Laurel?
Anyone else have questions? I'm tired of hearing my own voice, but I do have some questions about this. I appreciate the memo and especially drawing attention to the other platforms that were looked at. First question is how much, this says that it gives a price per student license for more than 100 students. What about for less than 100 students?
The price for more than 100 or less than 100 students is about $1,700, but we already have more than 100 students enrolled in our virtual academy. That's why we did not
Okay. That's helpful. And then I had looked around and I was curious. It looked like this is the program that Penns Valley uses based on the K-12 website. Had we talked and double checked with them?
I don't believe, Deidre, you can chime in, but I don't believe this is used by Penns Valley.
My understanding is they're using Edgenuity, Laurel.
They should, K-12 should take it off their website then.
I can't speak what's on the Penns
Yeah, no,
Valley.
that's not were you able to talk with any districts that actually have been using this?
We talked to an IU, Justin, I think Justin Hetrick's on the call, and he talked to IU 8, I believe, who was using this.
Yeah, we talked to a cyber charter in IU8 that was using Fuel previously, and they did have good experience with it, and the content being pretty immersive compared to some other options. Some of their concerns were mainly related because they were using Fuel's teachers, contracted teachers instead of their own district. So I believe that will eliminate some of our concerns.
We'll be turning on, we'll be using our teachers is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for answering those questions.
I'm getting a fair amount of feedback there. Let's see. Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, then I'll see if there's any public comment. Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion, Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Zidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. The next item is item J, a motion to approve the Go Guardian Suite for the 2020-2021 school year as shown in attachment 6J.
Duffy, so moved.
Leah second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I just had a quick question.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure this is an initial purchase, right? We don't have this software currently.
Correct.
I'm just asking that because it's listed as an upgrade to the suite, but it's an initial purchase. That's why I was confused with.
Sorry, let me rephrase my answer. It is the first time that we're purchasing Go Guardian as a software tool.
Got it. But it's an upgrade to what we currently have.
That is correct.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Jim, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I see this as more valuable when we're if and when we're in all remote learning, will the teachers be given sort of some professional development in using this software? Because it seems like it's very capable, but it needs to get configured.
Yes, as we develop our how we're using the time with the changes in the academic calendar, this has to be factored in. Absolutely.
I guess go ahead, Justin. Yeah.
So there are a pretty vast amount of remote training resources that we can share with teachers for asynchronous, as well as that price does include several webinars for us to offer PD sessions if we have the opportunity to.
Okay.
It also it seemed to me you could do a lot with the sort of administration console to set sort of general rules for each grade level, maybe even age level, and whether it's school hours or non-school hours and things like that. So it looks like you, even in the absence of some professional development, that you could set parameters across the district and then let teachers who are interested in using it sort of tune it for themselves, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We do have the ability administratively to kind of help with lessening the burden for the faculty to make it easier to use up front for them, so it's not all on them for the setup.
Thanks.
Thanks. Amy?
Yeah, I wanted to share, I did send a link to board members. I know it was late in the day, so many of you may not have had a chance to look at it, but I quickly looked at the website. And Jim, I agree that it has a lot of capabilities for if and when we are at full remote, but actually had some powerful tools in the teacher module in that will help us maintain some of that 6-foot distancing, because rather than have to go over and show a student how to get to a certain website, if they're floundering, especially our younger kids, and they can't seem to plug in what they need to plug in to get where they need to go, the teacher can actually still sit on their own terminal and access their computer and make those changes for them, or send them additional links to other videos that might supplement what they're doing. So it was really impressive what that software could do, both in the classroom and remotely. I know it's definitely, I'm sure, a new way of functioning for teachers, and there'll be a little bit of a learning curve about utilizing it, but that function seemed really powerful in helping us with safety in the classroom. And also just, there's a nice tool to it in the long run, in that if a teacher notices a student is off task or accessing or working on homework, say, for another class or other things, they have the ability to shut down their capability to do that. So, all of us as parents worry a lot about our kids' distractibility when we have one-to-one devices constantly being used in the classroom. And this gives the teacher a little bit of ways to guide students and also keep them kind of from getting into trouble when they're on their devices as well. So I think it has some applicability in the long run for us, should we choose to stick with it long term. So it was really exciting and interesting for me to look at. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Laurel?
Yeah, thank you very much for sending that, Amy. That was helpful to see. 2 questions. Are we using something at all like this currently that this is replacing, or is this a whole new thing for the district?
Sorry. It would be a new feature. We don't have anything like this currently.
And does it work even if students don't have a SCSD-owned device, if they're using a different device?
No, it only works with SCSD equipment.
So the students will have to be on a Chromebook to use it?
Correct.
I'm not sure how many students use Chromebooks exclusively. I know that at the high school, among the students that I knew, many of them were using different devices. Do you have any sense of how many kids?
Yeah, so last year we had less than 10% of our families were bring your own device. So a majority of our families, it was like under 100 kids were BYOD. Registered for BYOD. So they can, and that brings some of the confusion sometimes, they can still bring their own device, but they're still picking up a district Chromebook that they're using regularly And a lot of families actually have discussed that with us this year, that some that were BYOD are wanting a Chromebook just for the ease, so that it's easier for the teacher to help them, or more consistent for the kids whenever they have multiple kids in the family, so that they're all on the same device. But it will not work on personal devices.
Do you, and this may be too far down the road, but do you anticipate them requiring that students for all classes be using their Chromebooks?
No, I don't believe that has been a discussion at this time. So I would anticipate that we would just need to work around the few students that are still participating in the Bring Your Own Device program.
Yeah, I just, that is something that's a concern to me, because I know that for various reasons, and I confess that I know of one case in particular that, yes, this child was registered for a district device, but as far as I know, that was an emergency backup and was very rarely used, which I'm appreciate that he was able to get it from the district.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that students who, for whatever reason, need to use a different device are at least allowed to.
I don't think that's part of this contract, though, in terms of what we're voting on tonight.
No, I was just thinking about if we have it, and if the intention is to say, if part of having it, it's fine if kids don't have to have it. It's more that if the intent behind this was that now that we have it, we're going to require students to only use Chromebooks. That's what I'm thinking about. And that's where I would have a concern.
That hasn't been a part of our conversation around this tool at this point. I wouldn't anticipate that changing. I think Justin and his team can take a look at that and if necessary, make modifications.
Okay, thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, I guess similar comment to what Laurel had, and not about the devices, but more if it impacts this contract, and that is if there is something in the contract or some ancillary contract that does allow non-Chromebook use of this software, that's really going to be critical for people who are remote, who, for example, are using dual monitors or using different computers, are using their own home computer so that the district has Chromebooks to provide to others who do not have their own home computers. So I think that thinking through this again, not only as it relates to whether this contract would preclude ever, kids who are using a PC at home for remote learning to be able to participate on this education platform, I think is a critical element if it relates to this contract or the contract structure.
Sure. I mean, it's something we can look at. I think that the larger thing is because it's not a district-owned device, it's obviously difficult for us to manage and allow it. The main concept for this software is it's more of a software as a service. It's not a contract. So it's just a software that we can install on our district equipment to allow for support. So we're viewing it as a support resource for teachers. And we understand that at the high school level, we will have to work with teachers to work on some solutions for those families that use personal devices. But we just look at this as a tool that will help the families that do have Chromebooks and increase the teachers' impact on the classrooms, both in person and remote.
Okay. Any other questions? Justin, thank you for all that extra information. It's really helpful. Okay. Do we have any public comment? Okay. We'll have a roll call vote then.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos, Jim, Miss Sydney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell.
Yes.
Okay. That item has passed then. Next item, item K, is a motion to approve an MOU between SCASD and the SCLO Center Region Library. This is shown in item 6K.
Duffy, so moved.
Bedell, second.
Okay, that item has been moved and seconded. Any questions on this?
Could I just say, I love that we have this library in our town.
And I think this is a great idea. Yeah, to be able to, make use of these resources this way and make sure kids have access, especially during this situation.
And they'll build a connection to using the library during off hours and summers and everything else, which I know we already have good connections with the summer program, but this will continue to build on that relationship.
Oh, God.
Yeah, kudos to everyone who put this together.
Amber, if I could just make a quick comment, I'd like to thank the folks at SCLO and for Justin and our school librarians for really taking the lead on this. And we would have had this to you sooner. I was dragging my feet a little bit with trying to get everything in order with the ed model and the remote learning. But I wanted to reach out and just say thank you to those folks for their efforts on this. So thank you.
Dottie and Paige are with us tonight, so they're here to pass along some thanks. We appreciate both of you for all you've done, and we know this relationship's been strong long before this idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, then we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos, Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. The next item on the agenda, item L, is a motion to approve the food service training and program reviews to be conducted by Gilbert Consulting LLC, as shown in agenda item 6L.
Duffy, so moved.
Bedell, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this item? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote then.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Fazzard,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos, Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our action items, and we don't have any information discussion for this evening. So looking out ahead at upcoming board meetings, we have a Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee meeting on July 22nd at 10:30 a.m. That's a virtual meeting, and details for how to join us via Zoom are on the SCASD website. And as was mentioned earlier, we'll be looking further at the planning for fall school educational model planning at that meeting. Moving on then to board reports, we have Central Intermediate Unit report from Dan.
We'll see how long my computer hangs in. I'm down to 5% power. Yeah, I want to catch everybody up. This is a summary from the June 25th IU board meeting. The larger items on the agenda had to do with the board's approval of several changes and agreements with the Tri-County Education Association and the Act 93 group that would carry us through the upcoming school year under the financial circumstances in which we find ourselves. There was also a presentation from a company called Site Logic, and they presented an enhanced district option study regarding facilities. There is the IU for the last 2 or 3 years has been pursuing options in terms of either renovating or replacing the main office up in Clearfield County and finding alternatives to the rental facility that we have out by the mall in Center County. There was a discussion about the condition of the the facility up in West Decatur, up near Clearfield. And it was, they used an assessment tool called the Facility Condition Index, which indicated that the due to the condition of the facility, the costs of the deficiencies and replacement cost would wind up with at a rating of 0.73, which was unsatisfactory. The Site Logic group offered an alternative, two alternative replacements basically for the West Decatur facility over 2 phases. The phase 1 would involve replacing the types of facilities we have at the rental facility at State College, and then adding a phase 2 of adding offices and administrative support spaces that would emulate what currently exists at West Decatur. The total cost of this will be $5.5 million, including soft costs and demolition. Those are the big themes from that particular meeting.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Okay. Any questions from anyone on the Central Intermediate Unit? Okay. Then we'll have the National School Boards and State School Board Association update. David?
Oh, yeah, good question. We're looking forward to a virtual version of of both the delegate assembly that'll be coming up, I believe, in November, and obviously also the virtual version of the usual conference that we have in October. And some discussions going on about moving the conference in future dates to Kalahari. And so that might be an exciting change for us. So we're looking into that as well. That's PSBA, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. And then moving on to the SCASD Ed Foundation report, Scott.
Yeah, we have not had a meeting since the last meeting. We had a meeting on July 1st, so I think I had reported on that already, but I can't remember.
I'm sorry, is there anything?
No, there's nothing since that meeting.
Okay. Then looking towards the CAC liaison reports, have there been any CAC meetings since the last time we had reports? Okay, then looking forward at future agenda planning. Our next regular board meeting is August 3rd, and we have a few items already in the queue for that meeting. If anyone has items for future agenda planning, let us know. Laurel, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I hadn't noticed this. It may have been added. I was hoping we would at that point get a update on the playgrounds, which I think were slated to be done on August 7th.
Wow. Okay, that would be, this meeting would be before that. Maybe it'd be better to have an update when they're finished.
Well, but it's August 3rd, so I'm hoping that we'll hear that by the end of the week they'll be done, but if not, that would be good to know at that point.
Yeah, I think we could send a note out. I mean, our physical plant team obviously isn't doing that construction, but they're really focused on meetings and trying to do all the physical distancing. They're down 2 people in the leadership roles. And so, I mean, yes, we can have an update. I don't want them focusing on typing up reports or anything.
Yeah. Maybe like just a status update, like we're on time or we're not on time.
Yep. That sounds good.
Okay. All right. Anything else for future agenda planning? Okay. Then I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second, Sydney.
That's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, then we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.